What is up, fellow sickos? I am a still semi-delirious Dan Favale coming at you with Mr. Mort Jensen of the NBA podcast fame, of Yahoo Sports fame, of HBO Max fame, and of course, where you probably know him from most, OnlyFans celebrity. We are gathered here today as the HardwoodKnocks NBA podcast / the NBA podcast crossover to talk about the most fascinating teams to us post NBA trade deadline. We're going to start with the East, then meander into the West. We don't know who the other is picking, so that'll add a layer of intrigue to everything, as we don't know who's going to pop up for whom. But this is a way to talk about the fallout from the trade deadline, while also sprinkling in some actual basketball analysis too. Who doesn't love that every once in a while, Mort? First and foremost, though, sir, how the heck are you?
I am doing well personally. Like, my entire family is sick, but the fact that I'm not, it shouldn't give me enjoyment that the rest of my family is sick, because it doesn't. But the fact that I, for once, have like avoided the clangy hands of sickness is just, I love it. I know that I'm going to, just by saying this out loud, I'm going to jinx myself, and next week I'm going to be down for the count. But the fact that right now, as per Tuesday, February 10th, I'm not sick, that is a win, and I'm loving it. I'm going to squeeze it for everything it's worth. So I'm doing well, Dan. I'm doing very, very well.
I'm doing well too. Thanks for asking. But I think what everyone just heard is that your family's lack of antibodies is like PED fuel for you, which is a little psychotic, but I respect it.
Yes.
You said that's the most energetic intro you've come in with, is when your family is sick and in bed. So very quickly, how did you approach when you are approaching this exercise, and we'll give you the first pick of teams? How do you go about there's the obvious sort of, new guy here. They're obviously fascinating, but beyond that, what goes into for you? Like what's the watchability metric for Mort post NBA trade deadline? What is roping you in?
Yeah, so two avenues. They're obviously the one where it's like, how does this affect the rest of this season? Like the here and now element, like Vooch in Boston, for example. And then there's like the long-term view. Like we're not going to see Anthony Davis. Presumably we're not going to see Trae Young in Washington this season either. So then there's the long-term thing, like, Washington is exciting to a certain extent, although I freaking hated the trade for him for Davis, but we'll get into that. So I kind of break it into two groups, and then there is one team that is both in Group A and Group B, and we just need to talk about them because they made 7 trades, and it's ridiculous.
I wonder who you're talking about.
Yeah, I wonder who, right?
I would echo all of that, and I think the only thing I would add, which steps a little bit on the toes of the team you just teased, there is the level of, for me, the what the fuck factor of WTF. What's going on here? So that sometimes speaks to me as well.
Yes, same.
Now,
same.
You get the first pick because I'm a pretty generous person. So
you
what do you want to talk about first? Eastern Conference. Remember, you're about to throw out a Western. I hear it. I saw it. Your Portland Trailblazers coming right out of your mouth.
Look, man, I want to start with the Boston Celtics, because here's the thing.
They're on my list.
Great.
Sorry.
So I stole them from
excited.
you. Yeah. I mean, look, this was a team we did not expect to be this good this year. Me personally, I thought that it would be in their best interest because they have ownership of their own draft pick. I thought it would be in their best interest to tank because of no Jason Tatum and whatnot. They obviously didn't, because that's not how they roll. They're number 3 in the Eastern Conference, and they decided to be, well, I want to say buyers, but at the same time, they also got below the luxury tax line. So they both got a little bit better up front, and they got below the tax, which is impressive. The Vooch thing for them, I think, is fun because, he's becoming a curmudgeon old man, but that might fit beautifully in Boston's system because he takes threes, he passes, he's an IQ type of guy. They need a big man. He can rebound the basketball. He can move it. He hasn't started yet, but I'm assuming when the playoffs roll around, he is going to start, presumably. I just think the offensive upside in him within the frame of that system is going to be too intriguing for them to, I don't want to say pass up, because Keita has done very, very well, especially defensively. But you're going to need someone who can just move the hell out of that ball, who can shoot threes, who can give you 11, 12 rebounds per game. It's going to be fascinating to see him here in the short term. And the only thing I hate about this is that we're not going to see this team fully healthy, because there is something interesting in my eyes on a group with Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Vooch, Derek White, Pritchard, and so on. Like that would be fun for me to see. So there's a big part of me that also hopes they re-sign him in the summer so we get that lineup next year.
Well, I think part of the appeal with Nikola Vucevic is my guess, and maybe I'm just wrong, is it feels like he'd be more likely to stay for less than MLE money than an Anthony Simons, even though Anthony Simons' player archetype is kind of all over the place when you're looking at value. He was really good for them. What I do like, I don't know if they got better with Vooch. I think they filled a need, though. And I know you said we're never going to see them at full strength. Jason Tatum practices with the main red clause and then said something. He gave an interview, I think it was today after the fact, saying, well, don't read into that. It doesn't mean I'm coming back. And so after him being determined to come back, he's kind of tried to hedge against it a little bit. I'm going to call that gamesmanship. Jason Tatum seems like he's wired to return. And that's also why I find this team fascinating, because I wonder if they do this exact Anthony Simons trade or go about this exact tax ducking scenario if they don't think that he's coming back. Because Simons, long term, sure, maybe he's just not too valuable to this team. But if you don't think Jason Tatum is coming back, I would argue that Simons is a lot more important to this team just for the scoring, for the shooting. And so I wonder if part of their calculus was, oh, okay, well, Jason Tatum is coming back. So we're not going to, it might be a little bit of tough sledding in the weeks to come, but he can play the Anthony Simons role on his way back. He doesn't need to come back and be Jason Tatum right away. And so that really fascinates me. And it's also, you mentioned this at the top, they're just way better than they're supposed to be. They have a top 5 offense and defense since Thanksgiving. And this is just not a team that was supposed to have that at their disposal. I also already it's clear, and that was my hunch, but it's clear that Vooch isn't going to start over Keita, which I think makes a ton of sense. What also makes them fascinating is because of the way they went about ducking the tax, Mort, is they're playing this like crazy salary cap game to where they're going to have to juggle having below the minimum of players on the roster versus going into it for a little bit and then coming back out. And they can skirt that, or rather they can junk that approach and decide, is there a way to duck the tax around the draft if they want to? But I don't think they went through all that trade deadline activity just to say, no, we'll figure it out at the draft. And so that's another fascinating element here too. And finally, there's also kind of the immediate future of it all, because I don't think fans needed to root for the Celtics to get out of the luxury tax this year, but it's not counting towards the repeater clock. And now specifically, ideally, maybe they duck it next season as well. Just looking at their salary structure, they might be able to do that. But now what you have done is entering a year in which we assume or know that Jason Tatum should be available. We don't know what he looks like yet, but he will be fully available. You now don't have to worry about paying the repeater tax for next season. So if it prompts them to go out and make another trade, or is it the difference between them spending a bigger part of the non-taxpayer mid-level, or for some reason it ends up being the mini MLE, they're fascinating for a number of reasons. And finally, I'll wrap up with this. I need to see what Vooch looks like here. And then also if Jason Tatum comes back, I think they're the biggest. I think the Celtics with Jason Tatum are the biggest threat to the Pistons in the Eastern Conference. And I don't know, there are 2 other teams probably worth mentioning in that discussion. But as of right now, just based off what we've seen from the Celtics, I think I lean that way, to where the Celtics with Jason Tatum are Detroit's biggest threat in the East right now.
That feels fair to me. Yes.
Have you caught any of Vooch's early going in Boston?
A little bit, yes. So he's had a little bit of a tough sledding in the first couple of games. Hasn't hit the 3-ball yet, but it's so small sample size. I'm not going to take anything away from it. The fact that he was, labeled a backup the first couple of games and probably is going to be for at least another few weeks does not necessarily surprise me, because the Celtics have always put a lot of stock into having offense off the bench, be that as a big man or a guard, like that. They don't really buy into this whole mentality, it has to be a scoring guard. Like, as long as they get an offensive input from someone off the bench, they seem to be pretty much satisfied with it. Vooch is likely to carry that role right now. I wonder if that's going to stay the same when he starts hitting the 3-ball and all of a sudden he's like locking in for 16, 11 per game, because that wouldn't surprise me that he can do this. in a playoff setting, his rebounding is going to be so valuable for him.
Yeah, I think they'll need him against some of the more physical front courts. And then if you do have front courts that catching his game against Miami to where you like the players they have on their front line, but no one's going to say that they have a physical or super big front line. And then Vooch ends up having a really good game. That was his debut, right? Miami was his first game.
Yeah, that was the first one. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that'll certainly come in handy. I am curious to see, though, how much, because defensively, yes, he can end possessions. And I think Boston has, by and large, the talent to maybe insulate him still. I am curious to see what type of minutes he is able to play in the postseason for them, because that's long been a fascinating. Like, Orlando had no choice. The Bulls are just never going to sniff the postseason ever. And so it's going to be interesting to see like what type of role he plays on a real basketball team.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
I'm going to take us to the Cleveland Cavaliers, low-hanging fruit, but necessary. The whole thing is just, I've already talked about the trade Garland for Harden with Grant, and then they cut their tax bill by getting rid of Hunter and Lonzo Ball. They have Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis on this team now. Man, the Cavs are just, they feel like a science experiment, which I guess is overstating the importance of James Harden coming in. But look, they decided that his immediate availability is more important than what Darius Garland was going to give them. And we still don't know when Darius Garland's going to debut for the Clippers. But it's so fascinating to see him. On the one hand, you say Donovan Mitchell needs someone to take some of the offensive load off his shoulders. On the other hand, it's okay, well, James Harden's going to slow you down. And do you want someone who takes that much of the offensive workload off not only Donovan Mitchell's shoulders, but Evan Mobley? I think for this season specifically, it was probably the right bet. And you can already see through just 2 appearances Harden's made with the Cavs as we're recording this, like his average number of touches is down. More importantly, the average number of seconds that he's holding the ball has been slashed by 2 seconds per touch. Again, early going. So there is clearly this element of, all right, James Harden is going to try and fit in. And we saw him kind of be part of, it felt in Philly, it felt a little different before things went haywire. And then you go to the Clippers where this season specifically, he had to do so much. And so I'm so curious to see how he's going to fit in as part of this bigger context, because this should still be Donovan Mitchell's team in a sense. And you also should be giving ample space to, as much as Harden can augment the game of Jared Allen and more importantly, Evan Mobley, like you still want to see Evan Mobley have the time and space to, how are his touches going to be impacted long term? I think the big thing though is most of Harden's already seeing more of his 3-point attempts come off potential assists in Cleveland. And that's like kind of the ideal balance. I'm curious just whether they're going to be able to strike it long term. And then it's a question or curiosity or fascination with them is, I don't think DeAndre Hunter was this huge defensive loss, but he was at least a properly wing-sized body. Yeah. And so now you look at this team and it's, okay, Dean Wade, and then who? I love Jalen Tyson, has been great, but even he is just kind of a scotch under wing size. He's listed at 6'5" or 6'4", around there. Keon Ellis, same deal. Dennis Schroeder
6'3", yeah.
Keon Ellis listed at 6'3". Dennis Schroeder, what is he, 6'1"? And that'll give you some. He can be a good point of attack pest. But what's happening with their wing defense? I think was probably a question even before they made the Hunter trade, but even more so now. I think I've seen some people and read some people say, well, Harden's a forward functionally on defense. Anyway, I don't know if that makes me necessarily feel better. Does it make the Cavs harder to...
No.
I guess you could say, does it make the Cavs harder to target a little bit because forwards are less likely to be involved in the primary actions than if, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland going up against backcourts? Maybe, but that's the other thing that I'm just going to be keeping an eye on.
Yeah. Look, they wanted to accelerate. Donovan Mitchell has basically said as much. Like, I'm just going to quote him from an interview he did with Cleveland.com. In a sense, the team is going all in. It's time to go. When you make that move, understanding James's age and where he's at in his career, the time is now. I mean, he's just underlining everything you just said, and rightfully so. This isn't a play for next year or beyond. This is a play for this season. And that's also, I feel like, putting a lot of eggs in the basket of Evan Mobley. You better step up now. Like, you have to be the primary big man on this team, and you have to be that right now. So that's where James's impact, I reckon is going to come in. Also for Jared Allen, who's had a bit of a funky year. Like that's been up and down. I think that's been a weird year for him. He just hasn't looked as consistent as usual. So perhaps that's going to be a key emphasis going into the second half of the year here, that James gets him involved. Like I love the deal for the Clippers because they got younger and this set them up for longer term. So I love that. But I also understand the logic here. I get what they're trying to do. It's going to be interesting to see if they can actually make it work. I have my doubts, and I was a little skeptical of them shaking that whole bag. Like, I thought the panic meter for Cleveland was a little unjustified initially, because when they lost to the Pacers last year, everyone was panicking, like, do they have to blow it up? And I was like, look, we just got through year one of Kenny Atkinson. Like, relax. Let's get into this season and see what happens. And then they just disappointed to a major degree. And apparently, internally, they decided they had disappointed enough to the point where they had to make a major move. And I'm always questionable or skeptical of a James Harden acquisition because he hasn't really won you anything, but I at least understand what they're trying to do, and that in and of itself makes it exciting.
When I think what's also interesting, though, is if you're well, I guess it's twofold, and we'll get into this. I'm sure we'll talk about the Clippers at some point. There's two things you have to monitor is, okay, well, how bad was Darius Garland's health? Or was this kind of a stab in the dark judgment? But then it's also, if you're acquiring James Harden, it's under the guise that you're going to pay James Harden, is it not? And so I'm so curious to see what that contract looks like, unless does it all get blown to smithereens because they flame out in the playoffs, and that's just sort of he opts in, they're not willing to extend him, Donovan Mitchell requests a trade or something. I don't know. The stakes are so high here because this is something more than just going all in on now. It feels like this team is acknowledging that without making it to, I'll say, the conference finals, that they're reaching some sort of not just an inflection point, but almost a breaking point. And to that end, again, we still need to see it. Evan Mobley hasn't played with this group yet, but there's just something. We can make the jokes about James Harden, sure, but for a team that kind of needs Jalen Tyson or Naquan Tomlin, who was just converted to a standard contract, like needs those guys to show up defensively or to show up at all at the moment, it makes me feel wildly uneasy. And so you pile that on to all the other dynamics at play here. And I wouldn't call it morbid curiosity because I think this team's ceiling is still insanely high. They were my pick to come out of the East, and I'm not moving off that now.
Okay.
But this has the chance to, at least there were excuses, and I guess there would still be excuses built in, but with injuries or Garland's health, you always have those inbuilt excuses. They go out the door a little bit now when you make a move like this.
Yeah.
And to circle back to the Darius Garland health of it all, I understand this was mostly ceremonial and maybe sort of a PR win for the Clippers, but the fact that the Cavs were the team that included a draft pick in this trade is just, it makes me wonder if I'm insane. Because the Cavs have more information on Darius Garland than everybody else. What am I missing here?
Yeah. I had the exact same thought when it happened. I was like, that's the team including a pick? And that also makes me a little queasy just in terms of like, what is that injury report or the injury detailed? Like, what is that? The medical reports, like, how do they look? Is it really this bad? Because if it is, that's tough too. He's such a good young player. Young, 26, right?
I think he probably should have been, I'm not looking at the teams off rip, but I had him on All-NBA last year, and I know he didn't make it. It's like, that you never, like, what had happened? You can't just say, well, he's been unreliable. He made an all-star team, and he was in the All-NBA discussion. And so it's, what are we missing here? Players don't just fall off that type of a cliff, especially at his age.
Yeah. Yeah. And that in and of itself is going to make it exciting, right?
Well, and also just again, we've seen James Harden work with other ball-dominant guys before, and Donovan Mitchell's just super. I don't think he receives enough credit for his scalability, but that's a duo that is just, I don't know, I never had that circled on paper as one that I wanted to see, and so I'm fascinated to see how it works. And again, just how does that interplay with a healthy Evan Mobley too? That three-man dynamics, because Jared Allen, you mentioned his uneven season. He will find his place, especially playing alongside James Harden. So, which he never would. He almost did, but didn't. He was traded in the trade that sent James Harden to Brooklyn, right? So this is finally what the Nets should have done. The Cavaliers finally did. That's what this was about. Pairing James Harden with Jared Allen.
My next team, I got to go with the Wizards, and that's the long-term lens. So here's the thing. I was of the opinion, still am, and I know that I'm very alone in having this opinion. I don't care. I feel pretty confident about it, so like, come at me. I still think that any team that took on the contract of Anthony Davis should be compensated for doing so, because like, he played 29 games over the past calendar year. He's going to be 33 next month. We are also seeing that his game is deteriorating. He's being owed, because I have to assume he's picking up that option. Like you and I've talked about, oh, maybe he like is looking for an extension, whatnot. Like, sure. Fine. Good luck with that. He's owed like a $121 million over the next 2 seasons. And it's such a rich deal. The injury concerns are so ridiculously loud. The game is not loud anymore, which is a concern. But if you're taking that aside, at least they didn't give up juicy draft picks. Like, do I think that the Wizards should even have given up picks? No. But given what they gave up, it's not at a point where I'm like, oh, they blew up their own franchise. Like, no, you gave up something for a guy who was like a maybe, which fair enough if you want to do that. But I am going to be interested to see how this is going to affect like the youngsters, because it wasn't lost on me, Dan, that there are now 2 players in Washington, both of whom have repeatedly said, oh, I don't want to play center. I want to play power forward, in Alex Sarr and Anthony Davis. One of them's got to give. Like, one of them has to step up at that position and do what they don't want to do. At the same time, Keyshawn George needs development minutes. Trey Johnson needs more development minutes. Bilal Coulibaly needs more development minutes. Bob Carrington, Will Riley, potentially Cam Whitmore if they hang on to him, whoever they're going to get in. I mean, they're just, how do you balance that with Trae Young, who's like a high volume, score first, heliocentric point guard, and then also a fairly ball dominant Anthony Davis, who isn't just a play finisher, but someone who holds the ball a fair bit?
I would be more concerned about the Trae Young fit than Anthony Davis, because while I think he has
Agreed.
these certain offensive proclivities where he likes to be on the ball, they're not beholden to doing that. And in the position that he'll now, I think to be concerned, Trae Young is probably just more of an intuitive fit overall when you're looking at, an Anthony Davis, Alex Sarr front court. Is Anthony Davis going to have the space to even be a play finisher, to even hold the ball if he wants to attack in the arc? Sarr is taking threes, but needs to take more of them, his clip. It was promising to start the season. It's dropped off since.
Yeah.
I'm more optimistic about this team than you are. And I think the problem with them being fascinating is they're fascinating because of these decisions that probably aren't going to impact the product at all this season. They did say that they expect Anthony Davis to play at some point this season. We'll see if that holds. I hope we get to see it. I just want to see what it looks like with him and Alex Sarr together. I think defensively they'll be dynamite together. I'm more optimistic though of the fit, because maybe I'm overestimating the level of reality check that Trae Young got. But do you remember the report that said Trae Young is basically lasering in on the Wizards? Mm-hmm. And it was, well, yeah, no shit, because the Wizards are the only team who are after him. And that has to be sort of a reminder, or like I said, a reality check for someone like him, to where if you weren't going to get paid by your own team, or there weren't other teams that were foaming at the mouth to go get you, does that finally prove to you these small marginal changes you made throughout your Atlanta tenure just weren't enough? But I share your concern with if the ball is going to be in his hands. I ultimately think that it will help Alex Sarr, and I think it'll help a ton with balancing the Alex Sarr and Anthony Davis fit. Because Trae Young, for all the scoring efficiency problems he's had over the past couple of years, that's a dude who can work and set up teammates in tight spaces. And so Sarr and Anthony Davis should be just fine. Does it take away from anybody else? I think that's a fair question. I really am, though, I don't want to use the word stunned, but I am stunned at how many people were against the Anthony Davis trade specifically for the Wizards. If you wanted to take the TBD approach to see, well, let's see if they give him some unruly extension before we get on board with this, but there's a strong chance, if not an overwhelming likelihood, they gave up the number 30 pick and salary to get him. I don't see an issue with that. I think Trae Young and Anthony Davis are worth more than anything you were going to do with your cap space this summer. And the bigger question, I guess it's twofold. If you got them with the intention of extending them off of their current numbers, or Anthony Davis is going to get a max extension, I will absolutely destroy Washington's front office. But Will Dawkins, Michael Winger, to me, they've earned the benefit of the doubt for the most part. This is weird. They're zigging when everyone expects them to zag or whatever, but they're going to have another high pick because they're going to keep that top 8 protected pick.
Right.
There's talent there, and I think even if they're taking the approach of we're not trying to get so good right away as much as we want to help rehabilitate these player values so that we could flip them for more, that might be something Trae Young and Anthony Davis are on board with. I don't even know what the grand plan is there. I just think they have so many options at their disposal, and the opportunity cost to me was so low that unless you truly believe they're going to sign one or both of them to just blasphemous contracts, I don't see I guess I don't see the downside here.
That's fair. I just generally am opposed going in on a guy with this level of injury history. Now, I understand you also still need to hit the salary floor at the 90% of the cap, which, fair enough, Davis helps you get there, and so will Trae Young. Like that alone, those two guys are going to add up for what, 100 and something million next year if Trae picks up his player option. Yeah. So that alone is going to make sure that they're going to be closing in on 70% of the cap or something along those lines, close to it. I think 60 or 65. And if that's their priority, like in just saying, look, we still have all our youngsters. There's going to come in another rookie, instead of going out and paying someone else who's not going to get minutes, and just to make sure that we're, matching the 90% criteria. All right, fair enough. I'm just of the opinion with Davis that he's been so injured, or just picks up so many injuries, and he's getting older than I think we care to realize. He to me, compared to how he looked in LA, he looked outright bad, and like compared to his standards. I'm not saying he looked outright bad as an average NBA player, but compared to his standards, I thought he looked outright bad in Dallas. Like he had a few games like sprinkled in here and there where we were like, oh, okay, there's AD. Nice seeing you again. But if that trajectory continues in terms of him getting worse and worse, and the salary is what it is, and he's just not available, I mean, I guess you could say, yeah, so I know what you're going to say. Like, if he's not available, then at least you're going to get a lot of run for the other guys, right?
Correct. And I think that what you're outlining is only a problem if they turn around and pay him. And I'm just wondering.
That's fair. Yeah.
This is a broader strokes question, probably. But don't you think we might be past the days where someone like Anthony Davis has the leverage to get this huge extension? If he does extend, it's probably because they've lowered the average annual value, considerably.
Yeah. So I wasn't even baking in any extension personally, because I think any team looking at Davis have just taken like an extension off the table, because even if you extend him next year, he's extension eligible this summer, I believe, after July 1st. Then he becomes extension eligible. At that point in time, you're looking at someone who's 33. You haven't had him on the court in your uniform, in your own uniform. He's only played 29 games. Like, I think you would be at any price point, you just should not be looking at that for 26, 27. Like, this is something you do later on in the season if he's healthy, and you're looking at it and you're going, okay, like, could you perhaps decline that option for 62.7 in 27, 28, and we'll give you a much lower salary? The challenge there, Dan, is if they internally set his value at, I'm just going to throw out a number here because of the injury concerns and whatnot, let's say $25 million a year. That is a tough sell for Davis to decline that 27, 28 number. Like, then he might just say, all right, I'll grab $63 million and then go into unrestricted free agency in 28 instead.
And he leaves? And
no, that's fine. Like, if he does, that's fine. And my point is, it's still like, even if we take the extension talk off the table, it's just such an utterly shit ton of money for 26, 27, and 27, 28. Again, I am well aware that their cap sheet is beautifully structured. And I think that's why I was like, why go in and do that? And like, but I also hear you. If he's injured, look, here's your runway, Alexar. Here's your one-way Bilal Coulibaly. Like, here is your runway, whoever you get in the 26 draft.
I think I'd be more concerned about this because you're right. That is a huge number. I'd be more concerned. But next season, let's say even if they gave Bilal Coulibaly this massive extension, next season it's not a problem because none of their guys are super expensive yet.
Right.
Now, as you get into 27, 28, maybe that's with Davis on that huge number. Even then, you don't need to pay everybody at that point. And for as much as I like Bilal Coulibaly defensively, like he has just never made good on what we thought he could possibly be offensively. So you're not staring at this, like I just don't see like a financial breaking point for them. And so for me, it's more about the long-term commitment of if they did this and they're going to extend him this summer, it better be because he's coming super cheap.
Right.
And I just don't, I think they're either not going to sign him to an extension or we're going to look at the number and be like, oh man, what happened here? And I also just wonder, they're in this weird spot because even if you like Alex Sarr, even if you like Keyshawn George, even if you love Trey Johnson, this is one of the teams you look at and say, they don't necessarily have their tent pole of the future.
Correct.
The guy who is going to direct everything they do. I'm not saying that Trey Young and or Anthony Davis give you that, but at some point, how long was this rebuild going to last? You hope that maybe you get that guy with this draft pick, and that would be a whole other discussion of, well, who do they end up with in the draft, and how is that player, one, how do they fit alongside Trey and AD, but how is that player impacted by both of them there? So there's certainly questions to be sure, but I guess when I look at the opportunity cost outlay, I'm struggling because they'll be able to find a way out of it or just let these deals come off the books, and that'll be that. Because let's say they don't make these trades. They were going to be bad anyway or try to be semi-good next year anyway, and the end result would probably be worth. Like, their ceiling with Anthony Davis and Trey Young is, I would say, way higher than anything they could have done just in free agency. And you don't want them getting to a point where they feel compelled to give up their own draft picks, which is something, and that further insulates them against the downside. If things go wrong, you're not going to pay for it in the vein of Dallas is getting one of our first round picks or Atlanta is getting one of our first round picks.
I think it's because the alternative to me is renting out cap space instead and presumably acquiring assets instead of relinquishing them. And I think that's wherein I would have opted for that as opposed to taking on Davis and relinquish assets. Like, I would much rather have done that. However, I do concede that because they don't have like their main tentpole guy, they can afford to take this swing. Now, if they win the lottery this year and it's Darren Peterson or AJ DeBonza, like one of those guys has to go number one, then it's like, okay, you know, we're resetting the table here. Like, we'll everything that Trey Young and Anthony Davis wants, that is going to be up to us. Like, we're not going to be dictated by your needs and your wants, because if we have a Darren Peterson or an AJ DeBonza and we have a Trey Johnson and Alex Sarr, a Coulibaly, a Bob Carrington, Cam Whitmore, Will Riley, Keyshawn George, whatever, then we dictate terms. Like, right now, I think with Davis and Trey Young and without them having like that dude, they're probably going to have a little bit, not too much power. That's wrong. That's the wrong way to phrase it. But like, I would much rather have them focus on the future as opposed to whatever they're trying to build right now. However, that doesn't take away from the fact that they're exciting. I will say this. I might not like the trade. That does not mean I'm not going to tune the fuck in next season.
100% a top 5 league pass team at least to start next season, just to see the theory of all this play out.
Exactly. Like, and that's just the thing.
And isn't there a chance? So when you look at what was happening with Dallas, and I won't say Washington has pristine. So I think, by the way, that needs to be one of the goals this offseason. Just add as much shooting to this roster as you can.
Yeah.
But like, so with Davis specifically in LA, so you're there with LeBron and Reeves. You're not necessarily overtaxed offensively, but you're overtaxed defensively when you're looking at that group. Washington, just having Sarr next to him, or even if they're staggered, like then AD is probably going to like presumably play a lot of 5 against backup units. You have Keyshawn George, Bilal Coulibaly if he's still there. I've liked a lot of what I've seen from Will Riley lately as well. Justin Champagnie. Yeah, I'm going to continue to get the Champagnies mixed up.
Yeah, same.
Having him there. There's a lot of just guys in front of him or around him that makes his defensive lift a little lighter. And then also, this team, I guess you could have said on paper, it looked like you could say the same thing about Atlanta, but they weren't really running a front court that could have a Sarr and a Davis behind Trae Young. And so this might be one of the better teams that can protect Trae Young defensively when you look at some of the perimeter talent. I know Bilal Coulibaly is probably the closest they come to just a guy who's going to turn the water off, but I really like Justin Champagnie is solid. I think Keyshawn George will be solid. So just having those options, I'm curious if this team winds up, if it gives itself a higher floor next season than even many are expecting by virtue of it being better equipped defensively than perhaps we're giving them credit for. The offense, I'm not going to lie. I think Trae Young, if he's healthy, you'll coax enough offense out of this group. But I am concerned a little bit about the offense in large part because of the spacing, but also I need to see what the trickle-down effect is. I'm looking mostly at, I don't know who you're most concerned about, but I'm looking mostly at Trey Johnson, Keyshawn George, and then maybe whoever the Wizards draft this year as okay, how do those guys coalesce along with Trae Young?
So who's your next team?
Let's go with my Charlotte Hornets. LaMelo Ball is going to be a future Hall of Famer. I think that we've established this. Mort, I think I already spoiled this stat before because I mentioned the other team, but here it is. 2 teams rank in the top 5 of offense and defense since Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
The Charlotte Hornets and the Boston Celtics. That is insane. This team is insane. They are... I said this on Blue Sky. I said they're a heart attack, but someone correctly pointed out they're more like an anaphylactic shock just watching them. I think the offense, when all their players are available, it's, no doy. Like, this team is going to set the world on fire. But just to underscore that, they have an offensive rating of 138.2 when LaMelo, Brandon Miller, Moussa Diabate, and Con Knipple are on the floor.
Yeah.
That is stupid. I think they've gotten way more out of their center rotation, specifically with Diabate and Ryan Kalkbrenner, than they were supposed to. Kalkbrenner's been, he has the occasional yam, but he's been way better defensively than I expect.
Yes,
we're starting to see more Josh Green moments. If Sion James is hitting threes, what is he, like a top 5 player in the NBA just based off his defense? That's hyperbole. I look at the defense that this team has played. Brandon Miller has gotten so much better as the year has progressed. And I think you look at the data, and there is shooting luck caked in. Opponents are shooting under 35% on wide open threes during this stretch. But 2 things, one of which I already pointed out on a previous podcast. If your offense is so good that it allows your defense a chance to get set, that's an advantage. But this team can press depending on the lineup that's on the court. They do have some just LaMelo Ball size, Con Knipple size, Brandon, they have good positional size, but between guys like Brandon Miller or the work that Kalkbrenner and Diabate put in, some of the moments, again, that we're getting from Josh Green of late, having the Sion James wild card to play. Tijon Salon, has had some really good stretches throughout this post-Thanksgiving stretch. This team, I'm not going to say they're going to make the play-in and then just win a first-round series, but I think they might be so much closer than people realize. And they're also fascinating because, by the way, they traded for Kobe White. And it was in real time, I had some trouble wrapping my head around it just because of the opportunity cost of 4 seconds in Colin Sexton, basically, or 3 seconds, whatever it ended up being. Was that enough of an upgrade? And I started to think about it more. And you go and you watch Kobe White, and it's an upgrade. He's just the more versatile offensive player, where Colin Sexton can, he's been more efficient this year, but Kobe White is going to draw tougher defensive assignments. You can use him in different ways away from the ball. I think just by virtue of the size difference, you're getting 3 inches, 4 inches going from Sexton to Kobe White. He's better defensively. I still think that he is, and I want to be clear, most of the data is not going to back this up, but I will swear by it watching them. Kobe White's the more versatile playmaker as well. And so if you're looking for someone who can, if you're going to play LaMelo Ball, Con Knipple, and Kobe White and Brandon Miller together, you're probably going to have an offensive rating of 150. But if you're looking for someone who can step in when LaMelo Ball invariably deals with injuries. Kobe White is perfect. You could do better in theory, but realistically speaking, for what you have to pay these players, I think that's going to end up being absolutely massive for them. And I like them saying, yeah, we can have the flexibility to go just sign him this summer, but let's get him in here now. We're one, assuring that no other teams swoop in and pay him. And two, we're going to get a look at how this all works out. And I'm just looking at this team moving forward. I don't know where their draft pick is going to land this year, in part because, I mean, they're 3 wins behind the 2 losses, behind the 8 seed Heat. They're probably not going to have a super high draft pick, is my point. They might be in the lottery. Who knows? I don't know if they need to be. I look at the way this roster's playing. I don't think they need another high-end guy. I know Miles Bridges has his on-court supporters out there. I know Tijan Salon has plenty of his own supporters there. I just look at this as they need a front court upgrade somewhere. Yeah. It could come at the 5 if you don't think Kalkbrenner or Diabate is starting material. I'm more so, I wanted them to be a Jaren Jackson Jr. team, but they just have, and they have extra first-round picks to use in trade, so they can probably get away with making an upgrade via the trade market without having to sacrifice too much of their own future, which is a really big deal. So this is a team, the caveat, of course, is health, and I'm looking at LaMelo there. And I want to throw you a question to let you start off on this. I watched Knipple, and forget about the shots that are going in. You look at the possessions in which he doesn't take a shot, whether he's getting rid of the ball or he's just moving off the ball. Who is the last rookie that you can remember sending defenses into that type of a panic? My answer was Dame. And I don't know if that's right. Did I go back too far? Did I not go back far enough?
No, that's fair because Dame was after Steph. So that's fair. Yes, Dame was 2012. Steph was what, 09?
09. When was Clay? Was Clay
like
also 12?
Clay was, I think, 2011.
Clay was, he was 2011. And also, I think Damian Lillard just, by virtue of like doing on-ball stuff too, like Knipple can do. Right. Man, this team, though, they are, I'm not saying they're a top 5 team in the league, and I don't look at this team and think they're actually a top 5 defense. Kudos to Charles Lee, by the way, but there is a defensive malleability to them, a defensive heartbeat that I don't think receives enough credit.
I was calling the game between the Hornets and Spurs on Jan 31st. Like, I've seen probably 95% of all games in Victor Wembanyama's career, NBA-wise.
So that's not many.
I have never seen him being guarded as well as Moussa Diabate. He completely shut him down. Like, there was no avenue. There was no way to, like, utilize his size against him. Diabate completely dominated that matchup. So from a defensive perspective, when you have a guy who can shut down a Wemby like that, I know it's a one-off. I don't care because he did it over the full course of a game. So, like, it's not like in a few possessions here and there. This was a methodical undressing of one of the best centers in the league, one of the best players in all of basketball right now. That is special when you have a guy who you can throw in a theoretical playoff context and go, this dude shut down Wemby. Like, he can probably play pretty well against some of the other players as long as Jalen Duren doesn't get him thrown out of game. But that to me is special. Like, Diabate, I'm sold. I've been sold for a while, but like that game sort of solidified it at a different level. Like, that just took it up a notch. Like, okay, I was certain before. I'm like completely locked in now. Now, I agree with you on the Miles Bridges thing. So I brought up a name during that game that I called. I was like, and that was just a theoretical. I was basically saying, if you get a connector in there instead of Miles, because Miles just kind of takes shots without the flow of the offense. You don't necessarily need him just taking all those shots. You need someone who's a little bit more defensive oriented, who moves the ball a little bit quicker, someone who can rebound better, someone who can just connect everything, like just be that missing piece alongside Knipple, Miller, LaMelo, Diabate. And like, I was kind of imagining, not Jeremy Sohan now, but Jeremy Sohan presumably in a couple of years from now, that guy who will do the dirty work. He'll hit the occasional three. He'll have games where he finishes near the basket. He'll be set up, but he doesn't force the issue in any way, shape, or form. Or a prime Bruce Brown, someone of that ilk. That's what is, to me, is like next level for them. That's the next step. Getting someone in who plays more influential basketball than Miles Bridges, because they have everyone else playing their role and doing so freaking beautifully.
And what's also fascinating about them is they'll have their non-taxpayer mid-level this summer.
Mm-hmm.
I think the end of this season is probably going to inform how aggressive they actually are. Yeah, they'll use the non-taxpayer mid-level no matter what, but I think that might identify if they make it into the play-in or even the playoffs, then they say, well, how did our center rotation do against us? Or what does our forward rotation look like? And also, if they want to make a trade, there is the LaMelo injury stuff looming in the back of their heads. You can argue we need to be urgent because our window with him is we don't know how long, or do we wait and see leading into next year's trade deadline? Because one, look at what happened leading into this year's trade deadline, all the opportunities that kind of arose. So there's going to be that interesting push and pull, but I've looked at them as just, I was looking at free agents to see who would make sense for this team. They could do something like add Dean Wade, and the level of confidence I would just have in Charlotte being a threat in the East would skyrocket. I think that says the world about how their core is playing. I also wondered, this was just a name I saw, if you could get Isaiah Hartenstein, do you like him better? You would, even though Diabate is doing what Diabate is doing.
No, I mean, look, I love Diabate. I wouldn't send him away. I would look at that as center depth. I also think Diabate, he's not someone you play 35 minutes per game. I think he's someone you keep in the mid to late 20s. That leaves enough minutes for Hartenstein to, cement himself as well. This is the NBA in 2026. No one's going to play 82 games as well. So, they're both going to be averaging somewhere between 25, 28 minutes per game. That's one hell of a center rotation. I wouldn't hate that at all.
The other power forward, Hartenstein's not a power forward, of course. I think you're leaning further into offense, but what you mentioned about playing within the flow of it, I think this player checks that box way more than a Miles Bridges. Playing within the flow of the offense, Rui Hachimura.
Yeah,
I just don't.
Yeah.
Are we leaning too far into let's see if we could break the record for relative offensive rating in league history or something?
No, but that's a good shout because Rui is so used to playing off of lead guards and lead ball handlers. I think in LA he's kind of been underutilized. Honestly, I think there are. I covered a lot of Lakers this year, and the fact that he's just being looked off as often as he is a freaking crime because he's too good a shooter not to be given consistent touches. But he will bend himself to the roster around him. That's a good shout. Defensively, I question whether he has the right upside, but offensively, beautiful fit. Yes.
And I had two names. I already forgot one of them, but we both agreed that Herb Jones was a great trade target for them leading into the deadline. I think he's still, that still kind of holds. And I think it was a free agent, but I already forgot. So I guess, restricted for, I have two names technically. Restricted free agency doesn't happen anymore, but if they throw non-taxpayer mid-level money at Peyton Watson or Tari Eason just to see if the Nuggets and or Rockets match, that's something that I would for sure look into.
Great.
Do you have another Eastern Conference team you want to talk about?
I have a final team. I have a final team because I teased them, and that's just because what the hell is this? And that is the Bulls, because, we have to talk about them given how many
trades. This is why
trades
people come in to this, but they want to hear more on the Bulls. We get YouTube comments, Discord comments all the time. More on the Bulls.
More and more. God, that's depressing. Look, we can't not talk about a team that hadn't made a trade in 23 years and then made 7 over the course of 2 days, right? I love that Arturas Karnisovas came out and said, "Oh, don't call it a rebuild." Yes, this is a rebuild. This is very much a rebuild. You're absolutely starting over. You have every shoot first guard in the league. Everything is just so guard oriented. One of your primary wings is Patrick Williams, who's still so bad it kind of hurts.
I'm surprised he's not starting at center for them at this point,
right?
To be honest.
I mean, look, I like the idea of trying to rehab some value. Like, if they get a good second half of the year out of Rob Dillingham, could he be an interesting trade target for other teams in the summer when he has one more year left? I think so, or two. No, wait, one. This is
He has
his
2
second
years
year,
left.
right? Yeah, 2 years left.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
It feels like he's been through some stuff just by virtue of how much the Timberwolves invested in him. That's
Right.
why it feels like he's been in the league longer.
Yeah, like he's only a second year guy. So that's interesting. And the fact that they also got Jaden Ivey, I know that the league at large is a little down on Ivey because of the injury he got. You know, the Cole Anthony situation was ugly and he missed a ton of time. He's kind of lost some burst after that injury. But what I want to know is that something that is looked at as something permanent, or can he get that on-ball juice back? He's so young, like you almost have to figure his body will eventually get back there. But is he interesting?
I hope so,
enough?
because there's been moments where he can't get or isn't trying to get by guys like Jordan Clarkson as an example,
Right.
and that's problematic.
It is, and it's such a shame because he was one of my favorites coming out of the draft as well. I've always liked him. I thought the Pistons were only half serious in like trying to develop him. I don't think they gave him the benefit of doubt. Oftentimes, it was a quick hook. Then the injuries started happening. It was just tough sledding. So for him to get somewhere new, that's also interesting to see if he can sort of become the player that we all rather kind of envisioned. So there's an interesting, intriguing something there going on with him. Like, can Colin Sexton build up something for himself, his own market, come into free agency? What about Anthony Simons? Can he do that too? Like, because he was sort of put into a little box in Boston where like you're doing this very specific thing and that's basically all you're doing. Now he's getting a little bit more free reins. Like, he's allowed to handle the ball. He's allowed to make decisions with the ball in his hands. Like, is that going to remind teams that, oh, he's got a little bit more to his game than what he showed in Boston? Because sometimes it's a short memory league. I'm just intrigued to see how all of this kind of shakes out for guys individually, for the Bulls, like collectively speaking. It's just, you have to tune in to see, because it's so weird. And also having a million shoot first guards, it's fucking fun. Like, they're losing games, but it's fun. It's entertaining basketball. I'll give them that.
I would echo all of you say, but would probably add exponentially more confusion to the fold here.
Yeah.
And I will say, I did not see their loss to the Nets. I saw their loss to the Nuggets. And I just want to be on the record as saying I'm disappointed that I have not seen the 5-point guard lineup yet. It's been 2 games. I don't think we've seen it. Why has it not happened?
It should happen. It should. They have no reason not to do it. But like, man, look, when you think about that, the guards like Anthony Simons, Josh Giddey, Colin Sexton, Jaden Ivey, Trey Jones, Rob Dillingham, it's ridiculous.
The thing that I struggle with, though, is how are you supposed to rehabilitate the value? I'm looking at Dillingham and Ivy specifically, just because Colin Sexton will probably leave in free agency and Trey Jones is Trey Jones. How are you supposed to rehabilitate the value of one of them when you have both of them plus Josh Giddey? Just feels counterintuitive. I think it helps. Jaden Ivey has a ton of experience playing off someone like Cade Cunningham. And so if I had to guess, Rob Dillingham doesn't have the same health concerns, but I think that Jaden Ivey fits the motif of this roster right now more so because he could be used in different ways. So who do you have more confidence in them? I guess the other variable here is, well, Jaden Ivey's going to be a restricted free agent. As you said before, Rob Dillingham has 2 more years left on his deal. And so I'm watching that. I don't know how much Yabusele hated New York, that he was willing to decline his player option. I was sure he's going to pick up to go to Chicago. But I think
that was wild. Turning down 5.7.
I do have my justification was that he knew that he was going to a place where he was going to play because Chicago's front court depth is so barren. Remember before they even folded Nick Richards into they had Ousmane Dieng at one point. I was like, is he their backup 5? So I think Yabusele probably saw an opportunity to either improve his value overseas, or maybe there'll be a team that would give him a 2-year minimum contract, so you guarantee more over the long. I don't know, but I was a little surprised to see him do that as well. The other thing with them, though, and this always would have been the case, but now I'm kind of even more confused. They might have 60+ million in cap space this summer. There are two ways to look at this. That AK just pulled off like the greatest job security play of all time, sort of just wallowing in mediocrity for however many years. And now because you start over, well, how are you going to fire me now? We're starting over. Like, I need to see this thing through. Or why would they do this more so they could go ahead in the offseason and take a big swing on the trade market and in free agency? Are they going to go add Austin Reeves to their stable of guards and then trade for big salary, trade for Karl Anthony Towns? Like, I'm almost concerned because I don't see, we all view this as just sort of, they're admitting that they need to reset. But I also kind of look at it and say, they didn't do anything. They traded guys on expiring contracts. It's not like they did anything monumental when it came to setting themselves up for the future. So I'm almost a little concerned about what the Bulls plus a lack of direction plus flexibility is going to mean for this summer.
I'm not into, the big galaxy brained, this isn't what it's going to be like, look over here thing, but I'm just going to say it. With this many guards, you also get a ton of different looks at different playing styles, and that's probably the best way for you to reevaluate or just evaluate overall whether Josh Giddey is the right player for you moving forward. Because at that contract, he is movable. Like, maybe you look at him and you kind of compare him to the explosiveness of Jaden Ivey, if he returns to that explosiveness, obviously. Sexton, Rob Dillingham, those guys. Maybe you're like, perhaps we actually want a lead guard who can bend defenses off the ball. Maybe we want someone who doesn't take like half an hour loading up on a pull-up jump shot. Like, maybe we want someone who can actually execute plays, at a speed that isn't so slow that we can't even catch it with the naked eye. Like, there are so many different benefits in having so many guards around because it gives you a look at how guard execution can actually be utilized. And that gives you information. So if you come out in the summer and you may have looked at the second half of this season and reached the conclusion that, you know what, the way that Josh Giddey plays, love him as a rebounder, love him as a playmaker, don't love the slow shot execution, don't love his off-ball gravity, perhaps there's a trade there. I don't hate their approach in terms of just getting all the guards in there to give them different looks. Because maybe, just maybe, it'll make them realize that pace and space is the way forward.
My final Eastern Conference team, it came down between the Hawks, the Nets, and the Raptors. Would you like to guess which one I went with?
Again, give me those names.
The Hawks, the Nets, and the Raptors. Naming them in
Hawks, obviously, Hawks.
Yeah, I went with the Nets. The Hawks, wow. I just think... I don't really know what the Hawks are doing. Like, they're another team, and it was the same with the Raptors. I'm more pleasantly intrigued by them. They're a little confusing. I don't know how good they are, even as someone who was higher on them coming into the season. Mm-hmm. The Nets, there are a few things. Cam Thomas is gone. They're instantly going to become more watchable because he's not going to pull or hijack possessions away from all the youngsters. Nolan Traore is going to be unleashed. I think we might see some more Jaeger Joman getting like on ball reps I'm not just playing away from the ball. I'm someone who's going to drive the offense. Is this going to be a stretch where Noah Clowney is shooting 1,000,000,000% from three, or is he going to be shooting sub 20% from three? I have no idea.
Yes.
Both. Sure. And then you're also getting giving Jordy Fernandez, and this will age poorly if one of these guys is just like jettisoned before this goes live, but Josh Minot or Ochai Akbashi, just more guys who are going to be frisky defensively. I really like Drake Powell. There's just a lot of pieces on and now I'm just curious to see, well, how do they cook without Cam Thomas being in the fold? But this is also a long-term fascination play for me, and I focus on Michael Porter Jr. with it, who I do think he probably should have been named as the all-star replacement instead of Brandon Ingram, right? On court, not for his podcast takes, just for his on-court play specifically. I think I would have went with him.
15 and 37 record is probably the counter argument, but like in a nutshell, I hear what you're saying. Yes.
The Nets did not take on any money that extends beyond this season at the trade deadline. And we didn't talk about it in our trade deadline reaction, but that is something, the more I thought about it, they don't control their own 2027 pick. They held on to Michael Porter Jr., and now people are mentioning them as, oh, they might try and get involved in the Giannis sweepstakes. And I'm not, I think that would probably be verging on foolish unless he goes for far less than we expect. But this is a team that suddenly feels like perhaps they're just saving flexibility for the offseason and they'll do more of what the Nets have done. But I'm looking at them and I'm going, it feels like they might have a non-Giannis division major trade plus signing up their sleeve to try and hit accelerate. I don't know if that's the right move. I don't know if it's the responsible move. I don't even know if it's the move or in consideration, because Sean Marks has not typically, until they signed KD, Kyrie, DeAndre Jordan, went down that route, he has not allowed Brooklyn's draft obligations to dictate the tenor at which they rebuild. Still, not taking on any long-term money leading into next season, or I don't know if they looked at it and said, we got a 2032 first-round pick for taking on Michael Porter Jr., and in the process acquired a fringe all-star. It came at the expense of Cam Thomas, but are they envisioning something similar happening this year to where we're going to get a 2033 first-round pick? We would just want to prioritize that flexibility. So I thought that was interesting because they were the only team that had cap space at the trade deadline, and they didn't do. I wasn't expecting them to. They ate up Jeremy Grant or something, but I thought they were either going to eat like a singular $10+ million contract. I was convinced, and they did not. And so it's just something that, after some pondering after the fact, that now I was on my radar.
Could this be the Austin Reeves team?
Ooh. You got, man. Honestly, sure. I like it because I don't know how to feel about Nolan Traore long term. The efficiency needs to come up. I think he'll get there around the rim, but the on-ball speed is insane. And I also think that they just have, between a Drake Powell, I mean, Agbaji's going to be a free agent, ditto for Josh Minot, but just like all these sort of defensive pests flying around that you have questions about their offense. Probably Drake Powell has the fewest question marks on offense. I don't know. This team is frisky. They also didn't trade Nick Claxton for what it's worth. He was on the books anyway, but he's been, I think people kind of, I don't know, entering this season decided that his contract was not great. And so they've written him off, and it's, he'll just average a career high in assists and showcase more of a floor game and still be one of the most switchable bigs in the NBA. And that's that.
And with Jemin actually starting to heat up now, I think there's some interchangeability with him and Reeves, so like you could get away with that backcourt.
So it'd be Reeves. Who would you start as the Nets then? So or your best 5-man unit. Let's assume Claxton and MPJ are still there, right?
So yeah, so you're Claxton at center, MPJ at the 4, I would say probably, right? Then you need a primary wing, and then Jemin and Reeves at the guard spot. Like you're not starting Terrence Mann. You're not keeping Zaire Williams to that point, I think. Drake Powell, I like him.
He's probably the answer based on the current roster, though.
Yeah, but isn't he like 6'4", 6'5"?
Could you do? So how much cap space could they technically have? So they'll have. I'm looking at the wrong year. I saw 90 million and was like, oh, they'll be fine. So they could have close to 50 if they were able. They shouldn't be compensating to get off money, but could 50 get you Austin Reeves and Andrew Wiggins?
Probably not. Like I'm assuming Reeves is going to cost you more. But if you can get off the Terrence Mann contract, can you though? That's a little tough because that's.
Could you just trade for Andrew Wiggins? Like, so you're not going all in on Giannis, but you're giving up an asset plus Mann for Wiggins.
That's interesting. So it would be Jemin, Reeves, Wiggins, MPJ, and Claxton. Like
plus whoever you draft.
And whoever you draft, that's. That's the other thing that's fascinating about this team is how hard are they going to go after the tank? Because they have the 5th worst record as we record this, and they are 3 losses in front of. Well, because it's hazy because of the winning percentage, but like they got to make up 3 losses. Well, they're only 1 loss out of a bottom 4 record, so. In the East, just between the Wizards, the Pacers, and the Nets, there's going to be some shenanigans that's going on here. The best possible scenario for them is ending up with the 2nd overall pick, because then it's going to be one of Darren Peterson or AJ DeBonza. And if it's Bonza at like 2 and he slides right in as their starting 3-man, that works out great for them. The Nets is a team to watch next year for sure.
What do you think is more likely, that they didn't take on long-term money because they want to hit the accelerate button, or because they want to just preserve for the opportunity like they got with MPJ this past summer?
The second one, I think, because I still think they're an opportunistic organization at heart.
So this is going to end with the Raptors trading Pirtle and the 2033 first-round pick to Brooklyn.
Well, no, because opportunistic can mean so many different things, right? Like if they flame out on who they want to acquire, because that can happen after all their 30 bidders, they can pivot. That's what they've been good at. Every single time that they've needed to pivot, they've done so pretty well. So, yeah, look, this year was kind of forgettable. I don't think next year will be.
Are you ready to move on to the Western Conference? And who is your first pick for the Western Conference?
I am. Just in terms of like going for it, moving forward, or not going for it this year, but like going forward long term, it's the Clippers. We got to talk about the Clippers. Like, they decided to say, we're out of it. Well, they didn't say, James Harden wanted out, but they amended that and they went, fine. We are going to trade Ivica Zubac for a very good return. Let's be real. Like, they're finally pivoting towards something that looks a little long term instead of always being in this year to year business. Now, what does that mean for Kawhi is, to me, the big question. Because if they're going to pivot to a 4 or 5 year plan, then a 34-year-old Kawhi Leonard doesn't really seem to fit those plans a whole lot. Like, is he going to be on the trade market this summer? Like, I just have my eyes on this team in terms of like what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think there was the report that said teams are going to try and trade for him this summer. I'm curious to where he would accept a trade. Not that he has veto rights, but how many times have I said this? If there's a player in the league who's willing to retire just randomly because they don't like where they were traded, it feels like it might be him.
Yeah, could be.
Looming over all this, too, is we don't know as of this moment. The rumor was that we're going to hear more about it after the All-Star break. We don't know what's going to happen with this aspiration investigation. So did they acquire those first-round picks in the Zubac trade because they are anticipating that some of their own picks are going to be stripped away, or is this just an offer that they couldn't turn down? There's also just, they don't have and they're clearly, they didn't strip away their roster, but they acted, I don't even know if they acted as sellers, because I love Darius Garland, but you sold on Zubac for sure. But like, you're still kind of built to be good. You have Brook Lopez and John Collins in the front court. If Derrick Jones Jr. is going to be healthy and Kawhi is going to be healthy, which is just the other thing here. I mean, this was going to be one of my questions for when Grant and I do our biggest questions post All-Star break. If he hits the threshold, like, Kawhi Leonard's probably going to finish in the top 5 or 3 of MVP voting.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Which is just, I would not have predicted that entering this season.
No, me neither. He's been, look, the fact that, was it LeBron who got the All-Star nod over him initially? I think so. That's just preposterous. Kawhi has been as elite as they come this year. Like, this is one of those reminder years he occasionally sends us where it's like, oh yeah, like, I'm still that dude, right? We talked about him some time ago where I said, like, he's probably the closest thing to Michael Jordan since Mike in terms of just the specific strengths and the way that he can carry himself on the floor and his impact, and like, he's ridiculously good. So if he is on the trade market, even at that age, he should still fetch something good, right? At 34, 35?
As an expiring contract, I don't know. I would say,
all right, yeah.
I think you're probably looking at sort of a, let's say, Anthony Davis level return where it's like 2 attaboy first round picks, maybe.
Ooh,
especially because
he's the small forward for Brooklyn. That was the forward.
Ooh, they just used their cap space on Kawhi. That would be hysterical. Well, I think what's also difficult with him is LA clearly has these cap space plans in 2027 still, even with Garland on the book. So they're probably not willing to take back a ton of money. Have we even talked about when is Darius Garland going to play? Is he going to play? Because The Clippers, now, smallish sample size, 319 minutes, 626 possessions. The Clippers are a plus 12 per 100 possessions when Kawhi plays without Harden or Zubats on the floor. So if you're also just going to throw Darius Garland into that equation, the Clippers, when you look at the standings, they're guaranteed to make the play-in. Just the number of teams below them that are looking to actively avoid the play-in is all of them. Memphis, Dallas, Utah, New Orleans, and Sacramento. So they're going to make the play-in. But this is a team, when you're looking at who else should be involved in the play-in, Golden State, Phoenix, and Portland, if Darius Garland's healthy, are the Clippers the picks to be one of the two teams that come out of the play-in? Sure, I don't expect them to beat the Thunder or I don't know. Clippers, Spurs, let's just say that for some reason that's the first round. The Clippers get in as the de facto 7 seed and the Spurs stay in number 2. I don't think people are going to pick the Clippers, but when you cake in San Antonio's relative playoff inexperience, Wemby, Steph Castle, Dylan Harper, there's a lot of variability in that matchup. I would say more so than Denver, LA, or Oklahoma City, LA for that matter. I echo everything you said about, well, what is kind of the long-term plan here? But I'm also, if Darius Garland's healthy, I find myself wondering, what's the short-term ceiling on this team?
That's fair. That is fair.
Our next Western Conference team, I mean, it has to be, I've been banging this drum since before the trade happened. The Utah Jazz, they're interesting for reasons that are divisive, I will say, with their decision to play who they play down the stretch of close games, or should I say who they don't play down the stretch of close games. People are going to get big mad about it. Tanking's a whole separate issue. But I'm just interested. I wish Walker Kessler was healthy because I just want to be able to see the theory of what's playing out with Jaren Jackson Jr., Larry Markkinen, and Walker Kessler together. I thought the Jazz made a great decision trading for Triple J at that price. And we'll have to see how he ends up faring. He only has 2 appearances under his belt with the Jazz at this point, but you're getting a taste. Just Yusuf Nurkic still there. I don't have any doubts that Larry Markkinen can play the 3 offensively. I'm just very curious to see what it looks like defensively. And this is almost a better trial by fire because Yusuf Nurkic is not Walker Kessler. And so you're going to be attacked differently than if Walker Kessler's on your back line. That'll be a pretty big moment, I think, for the Larry Markkinen, Jaren Jackson Jr. defensive dynamic. And the other things I just also want to point out, Cody Williams looks like, by and large lately, an NBA rotation player. And then he's not going to win Rookie of the Year. The efficiency can be all over the place. But Ace Bailey I think he's going to be a dude. And so you have that. He's 6'9". Larry Markkinen is what, 6'10"? Jaren Jackson Jr. also 6'10"?
Markkinen got a size bump over the summer. He's 7'1".
So Markkinen's a 7-footer. Walker Kessler's a 7-footer. Jaren Jackson Jr., I think, is listed at 6'10". I'm pretty confident in that. Bailey's listed at 6'9". If this team ends up with AJ Dubinsa, like another 6'9" guy, they get to run out a lineup where Ace Bailey or AJ is their smallest player on the court. That's why again, the integrity of tanking is a separate debate, but the system is incentivized for the Jazz to continue doing exactly what they're doing. And if it's Keontae George has a lightly sprained ankle, no, he's not going to come back, even though you're beating the borderline sad sack Orlando Magic. So this team is fascinating for a number of reasons. It's what does the new addition look like on the floor? And we have, as we're recording this, we've seen very little of it so far. But 2, also, how hard are they willing to tank? Because they've decided this is the last year that we're doing this. That's what you've decided. You didn't give up any of your own high-end equity to get Jaren Jackson Jr., but by getting him and his contract, you've decided this is it. Like, this is the final year of the caps lock rebuild. And then I want to see how Keontae George closes the year, because the other thing I'm fascinated by is what does he get in an extension? Does he even get an extension? Are they going to say, you need to prove it to us again next season, and then we'll get you in restricted free agency? Or is there a number? Does he look at the first 2 years of his NBA career and say, I need like some security of the actual long-term payday? That's going to be an interesting negotiation. This team, though, even like right down to Bryce Sensabaugh, the Jazz, man, I'm all in on what they're going to look like next season, and I'm just curious to see like some of the like footprints of it. Well, let's say through the first 2 or 3 quarters of each game. I'm excited to see what that looks like this season.
I'm glad you're excited, Dan. I'm glad. And I share your excitement on some players at the very least. Bryce Sensabaugh, I'm glad you brought him up. One of my favorite dudes to watch in the league. This guy's offensive ability is just, it's nuts. It's just nuts. Keontae George, I will say, I think he should be given an extension. I would not, like, you know, it's probably not going to be a max this year, but if he duplicates what he's done this year, next year, then suddenly we're approaching max territory. So, like, if you can lock him up now for something that's more than a fun max, because it's not even going to be a max, hell yeah. Like, if you can get him for what, $27 million a year, $28 million a year,
and now you're not playing, and they might not have been playing this anyway, but you're not trying to preserve any type of cap space. Walker Kessler's going to be paid. Markkanen, Jaren Jackson Jr. are paid.
Yep, everyone's going to get paid. So yeah, there are a lot of fun stuff there. Something that I find amusing, it hasn't happened yet, but it absolutely is going to, is when some random ass 6'5" guard who's not known for his rebounding is just going to sky over Jaren Jackson Jr. and Lauri Markkanen and grab a rebound over the both of them, because that is definitely going to happen more than once.
I think you're underselling Markkanen's rebounding a little bit.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. His 7 rebounds per game in 35 minutes is for a guy who's 7'1". Yes, I am.
Who does play alongside Yusuf Nurkic. Who's going to gobble those things up now.
Still, like, historically, not a great rebounder. Historically, Jaren Jackson Jr., a horrible rebounder. We'll see. I mean, it's interesting. I will say, if I'm going to be slightly complimentary to that duo, which I'm otherwise very much not, the offensive explosion potential for those two is completely nuts. Like, both of them with the ability to stretch the floor the way they can, the way that they can take 3-pointers off their own accord, the way they can set up and play off of others, the way they can finish plays near the rim, the way that they can score in movement. And, like, I know what you're saying about the defense and Jaren Jackson Jr.'s defense. Like, I'm not arguing against that. But it's the offense for me, for those two, that is just going to be so ridiculously fun to watch. I mean, the manner of which those two, the interplay between them offensively, and just having a guard like Keontae, who is coming into his own, who's become a very good playmaker, the optionality he now has with those two guys, like, he can play pick and pop, pick and roll with both of them. They can set screens for another. They can do a bunch of stuff off ball. Like, the offensive potential between the two of them is outrageously fun.
They've put, honestly, I know people have said this, that this trade was a vote of confidence in Keontae, or not a vote of confidence, but it was nudged along by Keontae George having the season he is. It was also a vote of confidence because Jaren Jackson Jr.'s added stuff, and we haven't seen it so much this year, but to his from scratch arsenal. Yep. Lauri Markkanen and him are not those guys. And as of right now, no one else on the team is that guy. Maybe Ace Bailey long-term, but I said it before, you have to shout out Ace Bailey for just, one of my biggest concerns about him was, is this someone who's going to be able to fit within a larger ecosystem? And he's had no problems doing it in Utah. But the Jazz are saying, hey, like, Keontae George isn't just this plucky, upstart, fun story this season. He is someone who's going to be able to delineate touches to keep Jaren Jackson Jr. involved. And I think that's the guy. I want to see how they use those two together, because Markkanen is, both Triple J and Markkanen are scalable, but Markkanen's even more scalable offensively. I think the comp that people throw out is he's basically a 7-foot Klay Thompson.
Yeah.
Jaren Jackson Jr. is different. Like, you're going to need to put him in the right spots with a standstill, or you're going to need to develop a certain cadence with the way you're coming around his screens. I hope, one, that Keontae George plays a ton still. I know he's dealing with the ankle injury, but you're putting a lot of pressure on his shoulders. Now, had they made this trade last year, just the exact circumstances, I would have bet all the money in the world of it blowing up in their face, because I didn't think Keontae George was that dude. Right. I also was on record on this podcast at the beginning of the year saying I would sell high on Keontae George. I think that take aged pretty poorly. I don't know if he's ever going to make an all-star game. I'm not sure where I am quite there, but just between the passing improvement, getting to the line more, and just the general shot selection, and the fact that he too, what do you like Keontae George doing better? You want him to create his own jump shots, or do you like it when he's hitting spot ups, and he's able to do the spot up stuff or some of the movement things too. This team, I think, might be, maybe it is its own science experiment to where you're going to look at this roster is sort of just like a fully cooked Washington Wizards team, where you might not be able to point and say, well, this is our tent pole, the guy who is definitely going to be the best player on a contender. But we've got like 4 to 5 guys who could be the second or third best player on a title team. And that's how it all comes together.
I think we're going to see the real value in Keontae George next year. I'm pretty high on him. One of the numbers I saw bandied about some time ago was the fact that he's really been struggling on the corner threes. Like last year, he was hitting them at a pretty high percentage. I think it was like 50% or something along those lines. This year, it's been under 40. So like there's probably going to be some return to norm in that way. And like when he refines his shot quality a little bit, when he refines like the accuracy, I would not be against the idea that he might be the guy there. Like, again, we have to see it within a winning ecosystem. We have to see it in a way where games matter every single game, every single day. Like, because let's be real, of the 48 games he's played this year, how many of them have really mattered, have been high importance, have been playoff context type of games? None. So that's the next step, right? Like, I'm not closing the door on him being that guy. So we'll see. We'll figure out everything next year because the expectation level, as you perfectly outlined, has raised significantly for next year. This is the last tanking year. Whoever they get in the draft, this is it. This is going to be the team that they're going to run with the next couple of years. Keontae's 26-27 year is low-key going to be the most important thing for them next year.
I would feel, I think he's probably still the player you feel best about if you're looking for someone to hit a from-scratch jumper on this team. It probably still is Keontae George, but there's a chance that I feel better about Ace Bailey doing that, or maybe whoever they draft this year. That's the other thing, too, is they're just going to add another high draft. I'm assuming they keep their draft pick, add that guy into the program. And Ace Bailey is quietly, it's not a huge sample size, but he's shooting 43% on, 42 unassisted three-point attempts. So, like, Keontae George has always been, and he's made improvements with his shot selection. He can hit some just ridiculous shots. It's absolutely insane. That's the one uneasy thing. But I think that you just have so much offensive talent and the coach you have in Will Hardy, where you're not relying on someone to generate all these things out of nothing anyway, that there's going to be a lot of ball and body movement to begin with. It papers over if that is a deficiency. And again, this team is young enough when you're looking at George, when you're looking at Bailey. Bryce Sensabaugh, maybe he was the answer. Who knows, Mort? When you're looking at this year's, when you're looking at this year's draft pick, it's not an alarming thing. It's just something that it's just something to monitor. But there, depending on what the roster looks like, I'm already planning on hitting there over next year. I don't know if you can name a win total as long as it's under 50. That wouldn't convince me to hit the over right now.
And just to close this up, because I'm not a Jaren Jackson Jr. fan, but I will say this. He wins you games in the regular season. And that is not something that you should sweep under the rug. That is a substantial element. And for them, they've been so poor in terms of squeezing out wins for a long time now. For him to come in, starting next year, obviously, and just has them being competitive in the regular season, that's the best starting point they can have. Like, I still have major question marks in terms of his capability in the postseason because he is not one of those guys who steps up in the postseason. He's like the anti-Donovan Mitchell. Like, he goes down. But
the
anti-Donovan Mitchell. But like, I want it on the record that for him to go to a place that is in dire need of actually squeezing out wins in the regular season, he will help them do that. This is high praise for me. You know how I feel about him. This is high praise.
Now, over under 6.5 rebounds per 36 minutes for the rest of the year for him. You taking the over or the under? It's his career average, I think, right around there.
I want to be happy today, Dan, because like, look, my health is good right now. I want to say a little bit over. You know what? Screw it. 6.6 per 36 for the rest of the season. Come on, JJJ. Prove me wrong.
It does feel like they have him on sort of a 25-minute limit. And so in theory, although that's like not too many fewer minutes than he would typically play, but in theory, if he's going to play less, it should be if he could just grab like more boards in a finite period of time, it should be able to boost that total a little bit. I'll take the over too. This is funny. He's at 6.5 through his first couple per 36.
Yeah, I saw.
That's funny. Who's our next Western Conference team, Mort?
So I want, before I say this, because I don't know if we should go into them. Can we talk about a team who didn't do anything and that's kind of interesting at the same time disappointing? Is that a thing, or do we only
could be
go
yeah?
into,
Be whatever.
Okay,
I think I know who you're gonna pick.
The Spurs.
Oh, never mind.
No, I went. I
should have known.
Disappointed.
You were
I was
disappointed.
disappointed.
You were going to turn this into a Spurs talk at some point.
Yeah, I am. I was disappointed here. This team is good enough to lean into something. Like I understand the rationale in terms of we didn't like what was out there. We didn't like the cost. All right. To a certain extent, I can see that notion. But as good as they are, the teams that they've beaten this year, the roster structure that they have, is it not a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Scaredy cat-ish to not go in and like, yeah, but like they have the Kelly Olynyk expiring contract.
I believe that's the scientific term for it.
That's the scientific term. Yeah. They have the expiring contract of Kelly Olynyk that they didn't use. They like Harrison Barnes as well. They have draft picks. Like you also wanted to trade away Sohan. Like that was the thing. They worked together on a trade that didn't materialize. I'm just a little disappointed, man. Like when we were doing live coverage over at a Eurosport place where I work, I had them as one of the losers because I expected them to do something. The fact that they didn't, what's the end game here? Because you were presumably thinking they were going to make a run this year, the way they looked, right?
You don't think they're looking at it as Steph Castle's in year 2, Wemby's in year 3, Dylan Harper's in year 1, that they wanted to give those guys time. And it's sort of what the Oklahoma City Thunder did before they went for it was, well, let's see what this group, we haven't seen them in the playoffs yet. This is even, I think It would be, to me, it makes more sense. They did some things, but it would be more, I'd be more focused on a team like Detroit, to where we've seen a lot of their young guys in the playoffs already, to where, well, why didn't they do
anything? Right.
And we did.
That's a good one.
That might have been a lack of opportunity if Michael Porter Jr. wasn't available. But with the Spurs, what did you want them to? So like some of the bigger moves would have been Trey Murphy, Michael Porter Jr., Giannis. They were never going to do that.
Correct.
In season. What would have been like a name or a move that you would have liked to have seen them?
All right. So I understand that he comes with, he's not a perfect wing, but so DeAndre Hunter, he was on the market, obviously. Someone who has, and you said this in the East episode, big wing size. Someone who is like a real 6'8", who can score from the outside, who can put the ball on the floor. Someone of that ilk. I'm not asking them to go out and get an all-star, but like on the wing, they're a little bit short. They're not huge. They don't really have that prototypical wing guy. Like, Devin Vassell, 6'5". Harrison Barnes is like 6'8", playing almost full-time power forward. Julian Champagnie is a real sized wing in terms of 6'8", but like he's more of a guy who's not pigeonholed, but he's sort of a 3-and-D guy, and that's roughly about it. I feel as though they need more size there. Like Keldon Johnson, 6'5", plays bigger than he is. I will grant him that. But I was disappointed in the fact that they didn't go out and bolster their wing depth, because I do think there is a lack there.
I wonder how much of that had to do with what was the wing market for them. I just don't because you like Najee Marshall as an example might have made some sense here, but you're probably looking for someone who's giving you more spacing than he would have. Yeah.
That's why, look, and to your point, DeAndre Hunter did not have great shooting or isn't having a great shooting year from 3. And that might also be a key factor on why some teams wasn't interested in him. But historically speaking, I would trust him as a 3-point shooter. Like I wouldn't be discouraged by this year.
Yeah, I mean, going to they would have been, I don't know what it cost to get him. Andrew Wiggins probably would have been an upgrade over the Harrison Barnes minutes, right?
For example, like that's thinking outside the box. That's the type of person or player that I'm looking for. And all in all, I was just left a little bewildered by the fact that they're 36-16. I understand your point of view. I can buy the argument that, hey, they just want to like see what's up. But at the same time, with all the talk about, Wemby, given the size, he's probably going to walk into missing 25 games every single year with injuries. And then this was the first year where we actually saw like legitimate injuries pile up here and there. Mm-hmm. Perhaps that would have accelerated their timeline a little bit, going, perhaps we don't have 5 years to build something. Perhaps we actually have to do something right now. Like, look, I can be too harsh on them for this. That's totally fine. I was just a little disappointed. I thought they'd do something.
You know what it is? It's all relative to expectations, because I just assumed they were going to do nothing. It was fun to put them as a team that they could go do this. I don't even know if we did anything along the lines of predictions. If you would have asked me, do the Spurs trade for somebody in the top 8 of their rotation, let's say, I probably would have given you no. Logic dictates, could you have turned the Kelly Olynyk salary slot into something else? Not give up a core member of your rotation, but turn it into something else. But that's just not how they operate. I think that they're going to gauge how the playoffs go this season. And look, they have a top 7-point differential against the top 10 teams in the NBA, a winning record, 10-8 against those teams as well. I think it's fair to say, well, let's see what this looks like in the playoffs. But to undermine my own point, I don't know if you're a team, and I'm about to talk about another one that did nothing, I'm about to throw out there. If you're watching what's going on in Oklahoma City lately, I know they traded for Jared McCain. I know Jalen Williams is back, but now Shea is injured. They've just been so banged up. The offense at points has been so uneven. They should still be the prohibitive favorites to win it all, but I don't think you get to play this year's a foregone conclusion. They're an inevitability card. They might be, but they haven't seemed as inevitable as I painted them to be when they were, when it looked like they were going to be 74-8 or whatever it was.
Yeah. I hear you. I think like overall, I was thinking of the swap with, the swap option with Atlanta, right? And the Kelly Olynyk thing. Like, what could that have gotten them? Couldn't that have done something? Because then you didn't give up a core piece.
But what I'm asking you though is, do you have a name then? Because Andrew Wiggins would have costed you a lot of money, to match the salary. Keldon Johnson or Harrison Barnes is going out. Yeah.
Right. Barnes, could you live with that? I think you could. I love Barnes. I really do. Super professional, but is he as crucial to that formation as Andrew Wiggins would be?
I think that Andrew Wiggins would be an upgrade, but it's at that point, are they saying is the calculable we need to give up? And first of all, I don't know what the Heat are thinking. We're not going to talk about them because they're boring as hell. But
right,
they're just they've even done it for a first round pick in Harrison Barnes. Who knows?
Yeah, that's fair. All right, your team is up.
Another team that I'm fascinated by because they should have done something and they instead did nothing. The Houston Rockets.
Right.
Their justification has basically been the injuries to Steven Adams and Fred VanVleet impacted their level of activity, which is to say inactivity at the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
I would just like to go on the record as saying that that's a farce. You don't trade for Kevin Durant, who is closer to his 40th birthday at this point than his 35th birthday, or split right down the middle, whatever it is, and say, we can't really go for it this season. Stop. It's cool that you have him under contract moving forward. Look at it. You're supposed to be, you don't make that trade. I understand the opportunity cost was reasonable. You should have done something. And the kind of gradual, at times precipitous demise of their offense, it's been brutal to watch. I saw a lot of media members, even Rockets fans, saying they need to get another big or they need to buoy the defense. I'm still looking at this team. I don't know how they're going to score aside from giving the ball to Kevin Durant and praying once they get to the postseason. And I say that as an Alperen Şengün fan.
And a Reed Shepherd homer. Come on.
Right. I mean, Reed Shepherd is the answer, but will he be on the floor in crunch time is just the real question. Yeah. Houston is 23rd in points scored per possession since January 1st. The other thing is now this is on the season. There was a point were their first chance offense. I'm not the offensive rebounding stuff. I think it can still be important in the playoffs, but it's probably easier to game plan around. And now, by the way, a lot of it goes out the window without Steven Adams there. Their first chance to offense at one point this season, I think, was like third. The third most efficient first chance offense in the league, Mort. On the year, it's already now dropped inside the bottom 10. How do you not? I'm not saying we got well actually by a lot of Houston Rockets fans and blog people saying, yo, we've gone over a million times why Fred VanVleet won't get traded. He has the no trade clause. We're just throwing out hypotheticals as could you send him to a team that's willing to give him another contract or that he might like to have made an upgrade? But I'm not even saying it needed to have been that dramatic. Go out. Don't get a primary ball handler. Get some fucking shooting. So that if Jabari Smith is going through a stretch where he's shooting 32% from beyond the arc, or Reed Shepherd, for reasons unbeknownst to us, is shooting under 32% from beyond the arc, that you don't feel like you're as debilitated on the offensive end. And man, if you gave me truth serum, there are probably some takes that I could fire off about this team that I'm not going to do right now, but it is a problem that one game is a flashbulb moment. And we've seen sprinklings of it beforehand, but the way the Spurs, to call back to them, defended them in their latest game against them, where you're going to ignore Amen Thompson completely so that Wemby, like, that is going to be an issue in the playoffs. And I understand the perspective of, well, there was no trade that was going to fix this at the deadline. Who were they going to get? I thought they would have been a fun Michael Porter Jr. team. Rockets fans basically wanted me dead for saying that. I think that's fine. But you needed to do something. Are you just sitting here saying we might win a playoff series and that's enough for us this year? After trading for Kevin Durant, I think the kindest way to frame that would be anticlimactic. I understand they still have options moving forward that a lot of these guys have yet to even really enter their prime. Kevin Durant is 37 years old. And he is closer to his 35th birthday than his 40th, so I stand corrected there. He's 37 years old. There is no next season after that. There might be. You're guaranteed this season.
Right.
And so I don't even know if I'm mad. I'm not mad. They're not. I don't have a rooting interest in them. I'm not mad. I guess.
You sound mad.
I'm violently perplexed is what it is. Ferociously perplexed. That's really what it is. Oh, the first apron you could have still made moves. This is not like we don't need to. This is why you have salary cap gurus in the front office. You just couldn't take back basically more money than you sent out. And so I don't know who the name was, but you couldn't tell me that they could have just went out and gotten a shooter. Like just someone to throw in, even if it helps you during the regular season. Preferably, yes, it'd be nice if they got someone who would play in the playoffs, but to just go get some shooting to open up the floor so that Şengün, Thompson, even Durant have more space to operate. I understand if they're waiting to make a bigger read on this core until the summer when Jabari Smith Jr. is worth more money on the trade market, when they have to go through Amen Thompson extension, when you just have a full season's worth of sample size under the belt. But if the issue is, well, Fred VanVleet and Steven Adams, neither of whom are even close to their primes, got injured, and that's what sunk us, why'd you, I don't buy that as a viable excuse, is all I'm saying. Kudos to Fred VanVleet for being so important to this team. I think that's absolutely spot on. That doesn't mean that you just don't try to augment yourself and paper over or fill some of your biggest voids at the trade deadline. Again, I'm going to end this. I'll throw it to you. They traded for Kevin Durant. I just feel like that's a tacit admission they should have operated with more urgency.
I would agree with that. They're in a tough spot for, well, a lot of issues or a lot of reasons. The fact that VanVleet is at $25 million not playing, Steven Adams at $14.1 million not playing, Dorian Finney-Smith $12.7 million has played 20 games this year and has been dreadful. There's so much dead money on their cap in that way, not literal dead money as in Milwaukee, but just it's 50 plus million in salary that is either unplayable due to injury or unplayable due to lack of impact. Let's just be real with DFS. So where does that secondary help line come from? You won't find it internally. You have to go out and get it. I don't know which deals were on the table, but I do agree with you that this year, and I mean, as soon as they traded for Durant, that clock was ticking. That was the same situation as Cleveland's in with Harden, whereas you don't have time to go out and do whatever and build up. Like, you have to react to it immediately. The fact that they stood still, didn't go out and find more depth at virtually just, I don't even care. There could be depth at the guard, it could be depth at wing, it could be a depth at big. They need something, and I'm honestly, I just don't care about the positional need. They just need help. They need help, able bodies. When Cam Thomas was waived, he was a guy. I was like,
no. Let's not get carried away.
I know you don't like. Look, you don't like Cam Thomas. That's fine. I don't like JJJ. We have our thing. That's fine. Well, I'll accept that. I still think he would have been someone who could just absorb shots, which they need. I agree with you that this was a very inactive deadline, and I think that's a slap in the face for KD. I wonder what he thinks about it long term.
That's a really good question, but I think I would also, I don't know if I'd probably respect it. I would respect it, but I would understand it more if it was, man, Reed Shepherd just played 40 minutes and that's what they're doing. And they decided that that's not happening. And he has not been shooting the ball well lately. So I get it as one of Reed Shepherd's foremost fans, but you're not even doing that. And so it's just, you look at the start, like their most used core five right now, like the way that unit at points can struggle to generate offense, like on the season, like Amen Thompson, Kevin Durant, Alperen Şengün on the court, 120.6 offensive rating. That's pretty good. You start sprinkling some of these other guys into there, and the offense just gets super rough. And so you have the outlines of, okay, this could in theory work. I find myself wondering, yeah, probably would have cost you pick equity, but couldn't you have stacked some of these? Maybe he was too expensive, but couldn't you have stacked some of these contracts together and gotten to Anthony Simons' money? Expiring deal doesn't end up hurting your long term. And that's, maybe that's not a player that Ime Udoka necessarily likes. Doesn't seem like he likes Alperen Şengün on most nights at this point either. So, and if not him, to your point, could they have just been the Kevin Huerter team just to get to that money? Yeah. Just the guy, he has not shot the ball well in what feels like forever, but at least the theory of it has played out in the past.
Yeah. I mean, you have 4 guys averaging over 34 minutes per game. That's also going to take its toll before entering the postseason. Like, you need something else. I don't envy their position right now. Am I being unfair when I sort of have the Rockets in like a mental irrelevant group where I just don't consider them? Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I just don't consider them a threat to virtually anyone this year. Is that fair? Is that unfair? Is that too harsh?
They just have so much talent.
They do. Yeah.
I can't say not. Do you think they win a playoff series?
That heavily depend on who you're matching up against.
Fair. I mean, also, they're not going to fall out of it, but they're only 3 losses ahead of the 7th place Phoenix Suns. If you're the Lakers, the Rockets, the Timberwolves, or the Suns, I would say, I know Denver's not healthy, but I just trust them.
Right.
Man, one of those teams is going to be in the play-in, and logic dictates it's Phoenix, but what if it just isn't?
Mm-hmm. I know I don't want to play all my hits today, Dan, but need more out of Jabari Smith Jr. too. They just need more.
Definitely more consistency on the offensive end for sure.
It's just, I mean, for a while I've said that I would have paid Tari Eason over Jabari. Nothing this year has led me to think otherwise.
Look, by the way, shout out to him, because in the games that he's played since January 1st, he's still 47% from 3, while everybody else, Kevin Durant at a very freezing cold, 37.2%, Alperen Şengün sub 24, Amen Thompson, 24%. That actually feels high for him. Jabari, 32. My guy, Reed Shepherd, 31. So, Josh Okogie, he's normalized. You mentioned Dorian. Oh, my God. I didn't realize Dorian Finney-Smith was shooting so poorly from 3.
Oh, he's been dreadful all year.
20.5% over his last. It's only a 16-game sample size. That's since January 1. So, I knew he was bad. I didn't realize it was that bad. So, that is that's rough stuff.
Yeah.
Who's your? They should have done something. And I mean, look, they're losing the minutes that Durant, Thompson, and Şengün play without Steven Adams on the court, and that's just, I don't know, man. I love Steven Adams, but I just feel like he shouldn't be that important.
My final team, the Memphis Grizzlies. So
is this a WTF pick?
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Right.
They're rebuilding. I love it. Like they went from a core that didn't really take them anywhere. Like it started last year when they did the deal with Orlando in the Desmond Bane trade, right? Optimized draft picks. That was step one. They renegotiated and extended Jaren Jackson Jr. because that made him more apparently attracted to outside teams, which fair enough. I don't get it, but there we are. And they actually were able to squeeze out draft equity and get him off the books. Love that. Next step is going to be John Morant, and they've already been, it's been reported that they're not going to think about the destination on his behalf. They don't care. They are acting as a real NBA organization where they're basically saying, we don't care where you want to go. You're sending your ass to wherever we can get most value. I respect the hell out of that because, frankly, I'm getting a little tired of the superstar going, well, I want to go to Team X, and the team responding by, oh, really? Really? You want to go there? Well, we'll try to facilitate that. No, think of yourself. If you can get something more from a Team X and then you send that player into purgatory, that's your right. That is the contract that he signed where that is tradable. So, like, do what's best for you as an NBA organization all day long. Like, hell, that's why the whole, Giannis wants to go to the Knicks if he ever wanted to go to the Knicks. Like, if Milwaukee gets a ridiculous offer from, I don't know, the freaking Charlotte Hornets, just pull the trigger if that's the best deal you can get. It doesn't matter. You shouldn't always have to consider the thoughts of your superstar because, yeah, you might hurt your reputation for a year or so. All right. It's a year or two. And then everyone's moved on because everyone has a short memory in this league. The Grizzlies are just like, screw it. We're going to send guys to where we can get the most value. I love it. Love it. They're setting themselves up for something new. You can say it's a WTF situation. Or WTF. Yeah. I don't know if I agree with that. It just seems like they are hitting the rebuild button. They have a lot of draft picks incoming. They have a lot of interesting young guys. Some are often injured in Zach Edey. That's concerning. Cedric Coward looks like a real deal. And they're so good, Dan. They're so good at hitting in like the mid-tier draft situations, like in the 15 to 20 mark, even later on. They're so good at nailing those draft picks. I'm just there for that whole thing. I love what they're trying to do, just starting over and using draft picks as a way to get to something new because this was never working out. The Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane era was fine, and that's about it.
Are you a spokesperson for Robert Pera and I didn't know about it?
I am not.
I think this is, to me, they've had more success, but we're kind of entering Bulls West territory here where we'll make the damn decision already. They slow played this teardown way too much and kind of strung along fans throughout. Hey, cool. You draft really well. You trade like shit for the most part. Your biggest swing was Marcus Smart. Blew up in your face. How many times, including Marcus Smart, how many times you needed to use equity to wipe off money? You've never, even if you didn't think John Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr. was good enough to go all out and make a really huge move around because you didn't want to, they weren't good enough to justify the cost, then you should have tore it down sooner other than saying, yeah, we're willing to spend around this team. I don't love the idea that they kept John Morant at all. Rip off what is he doing? Now it's just a distraction because the other two are gone. And I'm also of the mind, what happened with the Jaren Jackson Jr. stuff? I've seen people applaud their return for him because they think that contract is going to age poorly. You know when that contract was signed? Last fucking offseason. So what changed? He immediately had surgery after he signed the contract, basically. So it's not like any surprising health stuff cropped up. What was the thinking there? This, to me, yes, this was the right thing to do, but I don't trust them to do it properly, or I don't even necessarily understand, because they didn't maximize the era when they were really good. It doesn't even seem like they're tearing it down because they're doing it in stages. And so this is just going to be a slow drip. And then you trade, who I think at that point, Jaren Jackson Jr. was the crown jewel of your franchise. How many of those first round picks or prospects that they got have very high upside? I love Taylor Hendricks, but the answer is one. And it's that Phoenix pick in 2031. I guess you could talk yourself into the most favorable of, what is it, Utah, Cleveland, Minnesota, having some value, but I don't know. This is, I get where you're coming from. I don't love this at all. I think the setup is choppy, it's disjointed, and there's never not everyone enters a rebuild so cleanly the way that, or we thought that the Jazz did by trading Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert basically in the same offseason, and we know how that's played out since. But this has been, it's just been a series of, a slow drip of tearing it down while lying about it. The Desmond Bane trade was like one of the most ridiculous justifications I've ever seen in my life, where this is a reorientation and we're now more prepared to invest in this group moving forward. Bullshit.
Oh, that's team talk. You and I know that.
But then why renew? If you thought so, was Jaren Jackson Jr. more valuable on a contract people are worried is going to age poorly, or just coming into this season at his current number? I guess you could make the case that a team like Utah never would have traded for him if he was entering free agency. But I just don't think you have enough to show for it. And so, yes, the Grizzlies clearly weren't going anywhere. They were spinning their wheels. But Mort, they've been spinning their wheels for a while. And I've seen a lot of... The thing that changed was Ja Morant was no longer an All-NBA player. Ja Morant was last an All-NBA player when?
I want to say like 21, right? Or is it...
That's the better part of a half decade.
I might be wrong. That was just off the top of my head. I don't remember.
It was 2022. So 2021, 2022.
Okay,
yeah. How many seasons ago was that? 4.
Yeah.
It took too long to get here, and I'm not saying that they should have, to me, it's not even that they should have blown this up faster. They never fully committed to their big three in a way that would make you suggest they even kind of understood what they were doing. And if it was a self-admittance that the group was never good enough, well, then that's when you get to criticize them and say, well, the reorientation or renovation or restart should have started then, if you were never convinced that they... And by the way, you had Jaren Jackson Jr. on a bargain contract for how many, his rookie scale into his extension. So there was plenty of time to take a swing without actually being as expensive as you could have.
Look, I agree with all of that. I disagree with your Bulls West situation because the Bulls didn't even get a freaking first for any of the players.
You are correct. That was totally uncalled for. They're infuriating me at the same level. And you know what? I respect the Bulls. There's that word respect again, because they're kind of straight about, like, we just want to be in the middle.
Right. We don't even want to first. Yeah.
The Grizzlies want to pretend that they're like a heavyweight, but no, we can't spend, or our core's not good enough. It's going to be awesome when they have to trade Cedric Cowherd in a few years because they didn't want to spend to build a contender around him.
So if that turns out to be true, because I'm not there where you are. If you are, you might be 1 year ahead of me on this. And if you're right about this, I'm going to just put up my hands up and say, you're right. Like, I'm not there. I think I'm going to give this 1 more year in terms of, like, them acknowledging, all right, here we are rebuilding. We are doing this. Like, if they're going to act as if though they're going to be a future powerhouse, that's a load of crock. I think this is the start of something else. Like, I agree with you, they waited too long. I also agree with you that it would be nice to have seen Ja Morant come out the door sooner, because now it's going to be a whole year, a whole calendar year in trading 3 guys. Like, that too seems a little drippy. I think that was the word you used. I agree with that. I'm still happy they ripped off the damn bandage, because at the same time, like, they were still trotting out that damn lineup all the time. Like, why? To what end? What were you trying to achieve? There was no upside in all of this. It was a complete waste of time. And I agree. And I agree with you that it's a waste of time not to do it sooner too, by the way. I'm not in disagreement with you over.
So with the Ja Morant thing, I understand where you're coming from of, well, you don't have to send him to where he wants to go. But I would need to see how bad the offers were that you didn't think it was better just to move him and be done with it. Because unless it's a public relations thing where they don't want to say, oh, we got way less for John Morant than we did Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr., what could you have, looking at John Morant's contract versus teams that might have, what are you trying to do by keeping him? Are you hoping that to reboot his value and trade him for more over the offseason?
I assume so. I agree with you that was a weird one because we saw what Trey went for, right? And I would argue that Trey is just better. I understand his contractual situation played a role in this, but are we sitting here anticipating that John Morant had offers or the Grizzlies had offers on John Morant in like the 2 first-round pick range? No, I very much would be surprised at that. So I'm not sure either what they're holding out for, but I do hope the fact that I just hope they're serious about wanting to say, look, whatever it is we're holding out for, we better get the best of it. Like I wouldn't want him to send him out for like a shitty contract that runs longer or anything. Like, and if those were the offers on the table, then I kind of get them just hanging on to him. But it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to try, if they're going to try to rehab his value, because how? That is a fair question.
I don't have an answer there.
I don't either.
I do have a next team, but I can't decide between Portland and Phoenix for us to wrap up with. I'm going to go with...
Portland, come on.
Yeah. I mean, I think Phoenix is probably more fascinating, but Portland Scoot is back, and they're 27th in offense since January 1st. Denny Avdia tracking towards All-NBA consideration at this point.
Yeah.
Still, that's a really big deal. If they can generate just any type of consistent offense, and if Scoot helps them do it, like they're not a team that I'm going to want to face in the play-in or the first round of the playoffs. But I'm also interested to see, like, their ceiling is kind of capped. They're 3 losses behind 8th place. So I don't even know if their ceiling is, like, could they get to 8? Golden State and Phoenix are the 2 teams that they're not catching Phoenix. They're 6 losses behind. Golden State's 3 losses in front of them. So, that's the defense is still, there are nights where it sort of wax and wanes. And you're wondering why, okay, like, why wasn't this better? But they can really gum up the works for teams. I don't know how to feel about them. I'm trying to figure out what they're missing, and I want to see more of Scoot. Caught very little of his first 2 games that were there.
Yeah, same.
Some of the shot making from Shaedon Sharpe lately has been absolutely outrageous. The base is just there, but I don't see, and the fact that their offense still treads water with Denny Avdia as part of the equation, I've been in my mind trying to figure out, okay, Scoot is healthy, and I'm actually asking you this question. What is Portland's best offensive lineup? Or what has the highest ceiling? Oh, I'll say realistic ceiling, because you don't just want to, we could throw out Scoot and Shaedon and Denny Avdia and just say forget about defense altogether.
Oh, like their best all-around lineup?
Yeah. I don't have confidence that Scoot would be a member of it.
No.
And that he's coming back from such a long absence that's not really a fair thing to say anyway.
I do think the two-way play of Drew is too alluring for me at this stage. Like, if we're talking right now, Drew over Scoot at this present stage, right? Like, I can't ignore Grant either. Although he's, for some, I've spent a lot of this podcast talking about like Jaren Jackson Jr.'s lack of rebounding. Like, that's Jeremy Grant for his career, just one of the most miserable rebounders in the NBA. But I can't ignore the defense. I can't ignore the fact that he's hitting 38 on threes. Like, he's playing off of guys. Shaedon Sharpe seems to have found his footing a little bit as a shooter, which I've been waiting for. I know you've been waiting for. Like, he's in there too. So like, that's 3 of those guys. Denny as well, obviously Denny. 4. Then it's about like Kamara or Klingon, right? Like, those, it has to be between those 2.
They're not playing. They were kind of fun at the beginning of the season because it felt like they were just playing these lineups without size, but they seem pretty married to the idea of, okay, we're going to have a big on the floor now.
And Klingon is just so great on both the offensive glass and as a shot blocker, just someone
This was my roundabout way of saying they made one of the, as much as it pained me to see Duop Reef go out, they made one of my favorite trades. I think Vic Krejci could be really good for them, because you see the impact of just having someone who conceptually, as a shooter is on the floor. So like the Drew Holiday, Shaedon Sharpe, Kamara, Avdia, Klingon lineup, they're most used. 36th percentile of offensive efficiency. You start to mix and match and you're throwing, like Chris Murray's in there. That's not a guy that is necessarily treated as a caps lock shooter, but there's the idea of him. And he's not, by the way, since Thanksgiving, 25% from three for him. Vic Krejci, that dude shoots the ball well, gives you a little ball handling. He has good size. He's not a great defender, but he's good size. He's always struggled with delivering a promised baseline. And it's in Portland, it's not as important. It wasn't even important in Atlanta, but that was probably why his playing time, by and large, was never higher. I want to see how much Portland is going to use him long term. It gets a little bit hazier now that Scoot is back. I'm very curious to see where his minutes end up being for them, by the end of the season. But this is a team that I really want to see get funky with how it's, and if that means, by the way, offensively speaking, if that means more of young, handsome on the floor, hell yeah. And it's like, to be fair, you didn't go out and make this big move at the deadline. You know you're going to be in the play-in regardless. There's probably something to, well, even if Scoot is hurting you, like you really need to plumb the depths of, okay, well, what is Scoot doing? What do we have in him moving forward? Because that's someone else he's extension eligible leading into this summer. So I really want to see them get even more funkier than we've probably seen this year. Love the Krejci pickup. I'm just curious what their stomach for experimentation is, because they can play the way that they've changed some of the way they play. Like they're not a team that feels, anecdotally speaking, I haven't seen the numbers, doesn't feel like they're pressuring as much on defense, but they're a team that's kind of rested on a lot of the same principles, making some minor changes throughout for a lot of this season. And I want to see them experiment even more now that Scoot is back, and just also lean into all right, maybe some of these offensively inclined units are really, really bad. But if we unlock something offensively, maybe it's easier to work backwards from there.
The fact that they've also gotten quality minutes out of City Sissoko, who, frankly, last year I thought he'd be out of the league. He was bandied about after he was traded from San Antonio. I thought he was done as an NBA player. Now he's back as a rotation member. He's found a little bit of a three-point shot. Like, this team has options in terms of being funky. Like, Caleb Love has played so much better than I figured he would.
Right. I mean, some of the defensive assignments that he's taken when you're looking at a lot of the off-ball guys like that, they've just found guys that are like doing good things, but it's yet to sort of merge into what I feel is a sustainably good offensive product.
I agree. And like, Vich should theoretically help streamline that a little bit, because he's more of an off-ball guy, like just bending off of everyone else. Like, he's not someone who's high usage. So he's had a rough start there, but it's been 4 games, so I'm willing to ignore the sample size.
I want to see I want to see him. I'm trying to think of what would be let's just go all offense, everything, or as close to it. So we need to go with Denny Avdia.
Yeah.
Krejci, I think, would be in there, right? And I probably,
in terms of just offense, yeah.
And then I think Drew belongs in there.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, who else you want if we're going all offense here?
Sharpe.
Well, Sharpe is there too, so it would be Sharpe, Holiday, Vit, Avdia, and then you could fill in your center. I mean, Donovan Klingon. I mean, he's got 3-point range now, so I think it's probably Donovan Klingon. I wouldn't hate it if you could go no big and say Jeremy Grant, maybe, but
that's at least offense. But like,
would you prefer Jeremy Grant to Drew Holiday to that? Yeah, I'd rather have Drew Holiday, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
But I've not seen a ton of the sprinklings that I've seen since Vic Krejci is there. A ton of minutes with him and Denny Avdia. And I'm looking it up. Yeah, only 7 minutes so far. I'm going to need to see more of that. The number's not good right now, but I think you could say that about a lot of the Blazers' offensive numbers for the most part. I'm curious to see their approach, because we know where they're going to end up. They're going to be 9th or 10th, maybe 8th. And I'm just wondering how that certainty adversely or positively impacts how they finish the season in terms of, do they emphasize player development? Do they emphasize trying different things on offense? And Scoot's the swing factor here, because we've just spent a lot of time, like, without really talking about him, saying this team needs kind of an offensive punch. I think some of the floor spacing stuff that would be nice from them, he's not supposed to provide, but as another on-ball, reliable creator, to where it's Denny Avdia, and then it's okay, who do you trust after that? Is it Drew Holiday? Is it Jeremy Grant? Like Scoot is it Shaden Sharp? Scoot's supposed to be that guy. Scoot's arguably supposed to be that first guy in front of Denny Avdia. In theory, when you look at the draft equity they have invested in him.
Correct. But I mean, like you said at the top, I think for me with Scoot, when he's how much did he miss? It's just 52 games? 52, somewhere along those lines.
He's played in 2. That's the only number that matters to me.
Yeah. So he's missed 52. That's just, it's so rough to come in with any type of expectations when you've missed that much. Like, the rest of this season is only going to be him getting like reacclimated to the whole thing. So we have to wait until Scoot year 4 to figure out like what he is, which just, it's such a long time. I wonder like how they're even going to approach like his extension this summer, if there even are, or if they're going to be like, look, we don't know. Like, we're 3 years into this thing and we just have no freaking clue.
Would there be a good analog for a player similar in his situation that actually signed an extent? Because you could look at it 2 ways where Portland, like, is Shaden Sharp actually the analog to where it was he still had all that upside, but it didn't look like he didn't tap into it frequently enough or for long enough. He signed an extension anyway.
And that was a good deal too. What was that? That was, is it 490? I want to say 490, right? Something along those lines.
And do they offer him? Would you offer Scoot more? You're not offering him more. It's easier to say now because we've seen Shaden Sharp this season, but based off their sample sizes through the first 3 years of their careers, are you paying Scoot? Like, what are you offering Scoot in an extension?
I'm probably offering him 480 and then a team option after year 3. So in the final year.
I wonder if I don't think he would take that.
No,
That would be my guess.
I don't think so either because, like, given, like, the pedigree and everything, but, like, that's what I would offer.
Because Sharp, and what did you say? Sharp got 4. Oh, my God. I didn't even realize it was even that low. For some reason, I thought it was more.
I believe it was 490. I could be wrong. Yeah, 490.
Yeah, I don't think you could offer Scoot more than that. Like, maybe you could go with the salary cap inflation if you want to calculate it that way. You could talk yourself into 4 for 100, but I don't. I don't think they're going to sign him to 1. That's just way too tough.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a restricted free agent too. Makes more sense.
I do think at least, and again, I haven't seen his 2 full games, but it just in terms of just like, oh, can you do something simple as you're going to dribble around screens or get going a little downhill and like spray the ball? Having another guy that you can count on to do that, I suppose, helps them. So he had I think it was the Grizzlies game. He had assist to Denny Avdia where he was going baseline and threw it out. And he doesn't look super quick right now, but I think the passing craft is still there. And so that's, I'm not out on Scoot. I feel like this conversation was a lot of out on Scoot. Do you have anything else you need to get off your chest before we get out of here?
I do not. No.
Can you tell our audience where they can find you and all the fantastic work that you do then, sir?
Yes, you can. You can find my work over at Yahoo Sports at the NBA podcast. And if you understand Danish, you can listen to Buzzer Beater. That's a Danish podcast. Or you can catch me calling games on HBO Max.
Please remember to rate, review, subscribe across all platforms. HardwoodKnocks, search wherever you find it. Leave reviews, written reviews on Apple. Help us a ton on the charts. Go check out the NBA podcast as well, hosted by Mort. That should be easily to search when you look at its name. Join our Discord. The link to that's in the podcast and YouTube description. And as always, we give the shout out to the one, the only, the indelible. He was not traded at the trade deadline, sadly. Not sadly, he wasn't on an NBA roster, even though he obviously should be. He could be starting for your favorite team right now. I guarantee it. Mr. Frank Ntilikina.